I'm here today for the 31st time in my series on the special interest scheme that captured the United States Supreme Court.
One of the most secret organizations in the world.
These members of an unashamedly elitist movement aim to influence and change society from the very top.
Endorsed by former popes and feared by former members.
It's a highly disciplined, highly secretive sect, far more interested in amassing power and influence.
Members of the group hold key economic and political positions.
Honestly, I didn't want to make this video, and it may even get me killed. But the members of a 100-year-old religious cult called Opus Dei have been funded by a small group of the country's richest families to completely take over the United States Supreme Court and seize power from our government. They are now imposing their toxic mix of religious zealotry and libertarian corporate control to take away all of your rights and further line their pockets with even more wealth that is being stolen from the rest of us. For the past 40 years, I have been mourned by members of my family and had a front row seat to their evil plan that has built so much power that it has overcome the guardrails of our society. As judge after judge has stuck down law after law and reversed 100 years of progress and hard-won freedoms. Now they have total control of the Supreme Court and will continue to strip away all your rights by removing all laws that protect your privacy, your bodily freedom, your right to vote, the environment, who you can marry, and your right to just exist without a home or property. Why would men of great wealth do this? It is simple. It is about money, power, and greed. As Charles Koch said when asked why would a billionaire steal hundreds of millions of dollars of oil from the Osage Indians for over 2 decades, he answered, "Because I want my fair share," which is all of it. Sadly, it is the same story that is as old as Cain and Abel. The pharaohs and Genghis Khan, and for the next 10 minutes, you will find out why this is happening, who is doing this to you, and what you can do about it. Now, brave men like Sheldon Whitehouse have come out to expose what is called the scheme and try to reverse this wretched and corrupt plot before it is too late. Have you ever heard of Opus Dei? Probably not. But if it rings a bell, you probably think it is a religious organization mentioned in the movie The Da Vinci Code that just wants to strengthen the belief of its members in Christianity and make them better Christians. Unfortunately, it has been hijacked and used by men of great wealth and influence since the 1930s. To finally finish the job, a group of rich, conservative university law students started over 40 years ago when they founded the Federalist Society to put activist judges into the federal court system and destroy democracy by overturning existing laws they just don't like. What is Opus Dei? It is a Catholic institution founded in Spain on October 2nd, 1928 by a Spanish priest named José María Escriva. It first gained influence starting in 1939 during the Spanish Civil War with the fascist dictator named Franco, supported by Nazi Germany and fascist Italy. Its founder, José Escriva, once said, "To be in the military is to be halfway to becoming an Opus Dei member." I don't think Jesus would agree with that, do you? The name Opus Dei is of Latin origin, which means work of God. Its members believe they are called to serve God and strive to implement Christian ideals and values in their occupations and society as a whole. But the problem is not what their values and beliefs are. Other than having allegiance to the Pope in Rome, there is nothing Christian about them at all. In addition to their unfailing loyalty to the Vatican, these guys hold many secular government positions, which they have leveraged to control women and enslave us all with a mix of corporate oligarchy and extreme Roman Catholic and evangelical rule. When John F. Kennedy ran for president, the nation was afraid that electing a Catholic president would subject the United States to the rule of Rome and the Pope, who is the head of the Catholic Church. They were wrong. It's the Supreme Court we should have been worried about, because that is the one branch of government that can nullify the Congress and the president with the stroke of a pen. Now Justices Thomas, Alito, Roberts, Kavanaugh, Barrett, and other Opus Dei advocates on the court are just making up new rules to strike down laws and nullify whole government agencies like the EPA and the Voting Rights Act. The worst of them, Justice Samuel Alito, is even quoting 400-year-old religious zealots who burned witches to take away a woman's right to choose. And now there is nothing to stop them from eliminating all of our rights at their whim while laughing at you in the process. But that said, you're probably wondering what relationship the Opus Dei has with the Supreme Court. Well, I'll tell you. You see,
At first, I never wanted to make this video, but when I used the Audible app, which is today's sponsor, to listen to books like Captured and The Scheme by Sheldon Whitehouse and The Hidden History of the Supreme Court by Tom Hartman, I just can't stay silent. That's why I decided to make this video. But let's get back to the Opus Dei, the Federalist Society, and the U.S. Supreme Court.
In 1982, an organization called the Federalist Society was founded by a group of rich right-wing political and religious uber-conservatives at Yale, Harvard, and the Chicago Schools of Law. Through this elitist group of self-proclaimed concerned students, a few very rich men who are devout Catholic zealots figured out a way to bypass our lawmakers in the House of Representatives, the Senate, and even the President of the United States to get what they want and destroy our country as we know it. They formed the Federalist Society to appoint extremely conservative, pro-corporate religious zealots to every federal court.
And guys, it worked better than anyone could imagine. Before we knew it, billionaires were flocking to support the Federalist Society and create all the other fake grassroots and independent front groups necessary to steal our democracy. They call them think tanks with innocent-sounding names like the Federalist Society, the Heritage Foundation, the American Enterprise Institute, and the Ethics and Policy Center. Now you might be thinking, but the Federalist Society is not the Opus Dei. And yeah,
actually, you make a good point.
After all, both groups were established at different times, more than 5 decades apart, in fact. Once again, that's true, but it's also true that strong links have been drawn between the two groups.
For instance, Leonardo Leo, an American lawyer and conservative legal activist, is a co-chairman of the organization's board of directors. He is also one scary control freak and evil dystopian sociopath. He wants to destroy public schools and create publicly funded Christian schools instead. He wants to remake society where his version of religion and those of his Opus Dei pals are the law of the land.
Not Congress's, which means not yours. But Leonard Leo's Federalist Society is now armed with $1.5 billion in tax-free money to continue this evil organization's work of dismantling democratic government and destroying our country as we know it. That's worrying. It's time to wake up. Opus Dei and its Federalist Society foot soldiers have seized final control over the United States Supreme Court and are reversing 60 years of hard-won progress, nullifying our laws and enslaving us. All of your rights are getting stolen from you, and you don't even know why. Well, now you do.
You are welcome!
And as the saying goes, it happens slowly, then all at once.
Now, let's talk about your rights and how these guys are stealing them from you. We'll begin with your right to vote. Chief Justice Roberts first became involved in efforts to curtail the 1965 Voting Rights Act during the 1980s when he worked as a lawyer in President Reagan's Justice Department in trying to weaken the landmark law, which was intended to ensure all Americans could vote. Finally, in 2013, the conservative majority eliminated provisions that required states with a history of voting rights discrimination to get approval from the federal government before changing voting laws. States can now require strict voter ID laws, so married women or divorced women who didn't legally change their name can simply be denied the right to vote because it won't match their birth certificate or their latest ID. See how that works? Are you an Indian on the reservation with no recognized street address? Sorry, no vote for you. Are you poor and moved locations so your new ID doesn't match your old address? Again, no vote for you. The sad part is that these laws are being enacted in all the states that previously would require pre-approval before they could change their laws. All because John Roberts, head of the Supreme Court and the whitest of white guys, said, "There is no more racism in America. We have a black president." Roberts voted in the Citizens United case to give unlimited and untraceable corporate money to politicians. This ruling allowed corporations to spend unlimited amounts of money on independent political expenditures, giving corporations and wealthy donors huge influence over elections. And his reason for that is that he thinks money is free speech. Companies are people, and giving money to politicians does not lead to bribery. How ridiculous is that?
It makes no sense to me at all.
How is it possible that 6 people who are political appointees for life can just make these decisions? Unfortunately, it gets much worse. Most people would say everyone should have full autonomy over their bodies, but not these lifetime appointed corrupt religious zealots who rule us from the Supreme Court. With the repeal of Roe v. Wade, you will have to carry your rapist's baby whether you like it or not. Women and girls as young as 10 years old are being forced to be at death's door for a non-viable pregnancy because doctors will get prosecuted for just trying to be what should be a decision between a woman, her doctor, and her family. Groups like the Federalist Society, Marble Freedom Group, and Opus Dei are making things worse by pushing their agendas. This is why many ridiculous laws are now being passed and established laws are being stuck down, all based on extreme religious views and corporate greed. You can no longer abort a baby, no matter the circumstances surrounding your conception or the health of the fetus or the mother. And because this law no longer exists, innocent girls as young as 12 years old who become pregnant through molestation are now being wasted in the dead of night to hide the perpetrator's crime, especially if the crime was incest. And for those who don't get deleted by their assaulters, many will eventually self-delete because they can't bear to live with the shame of carrying their uncle, brother, father, or other assaulter's baby. It is not a joke that rapists now will get to pick the mothers of their children. Talk about unintended consequences. By trying to protect the unborn, we are killing the living. It's not just worrying. It is a crime against humanity. Mr. Leo drew up lists of potential justices during the 2016 campaign and advised President Trump on the nominations of Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett so they could reverse Roe v. Wade and strip a woman's right to reproductive health care. All three lied to Congress saying that Roe v. Wade was settled law. I guess it was until enough of them got a majority and decided it wasn't. Before that, he had helped pick or confirm the court's three other conservative justices, Clarence Thomas, John Roberts, and Samuel Alito. Do you now see how this all works and why it is called the scheme? And even as you watch this video, Justice Thomas is dropping hints to the Federalist Society on how to take away even more of your rights, like access to birth control and eliminating child labor laws. All they ask in return is to keep funding their lavish lifestyles, buy them vacations, motorhomes, and even properties for their families, and let them fly them around in their master's private jet. And the worst part? The Supreme Court members don't even have to disclose any of it. As the last example in this video, I will show you the worst of it. The notorious Texas-based real estate billionaire Harlan Crow has purchased Clarence Thomas's mother's house and lets her live there for free. He and other hedge fund billionaires bought him $1 million luxury motorhome because he never paid back the loan they gave him for it. That's a neat trick, right? Harlan Crow has on full display in his Dallas mansion the Nazi tea set of Adolf Hitler, along with napkins with swastikas on them, and even a signed copy of Mein Kampf, signed by Hitler himself. Not evil enough? It gets worse. After a fine meal at Harlan Crow's house surrounded by Nazi tea sets and dinnerware, you can take a stroll outside in his Garden of Evil, where Mr. Crow has life-size statues of the world's most notorious dictators and tyrants, like Vladimir Lenin, Joseph Stalin, Nicolae Ceausescu, Chairman Mao Zedong, and Fidel Castro, almost like they were his heroes. And these Supreme Court justices don't care. Why should they? They are appointed for life. So what are you going to do about it? Guys like Harlan Crow and Leonard Leo are picking who gets to sit on the Supreme Court. They operate above the law in that sense. It's outrageous, but it's happening right now, and it's time to wake up and get angry about it. But what exactly can you and I do about this mess? Well, we honestly don't have many options, but there's one thing we could do. We could either expand the Supreme Court or have Congress make laws to change the court's rules and limit their power. We don't even have to amend the Constitution, to be honest. It's not a foolproof plan because even if Congress tries to change the rules, the Supreme Court might just declare it unconstitutional. So we're stuck in a catch-22 loop of evil abusers. It's a very tricky situation where the abusers of power hold all the cards. The best thing you can do is to vote. Call your congressman or congresswomen and vote. But before you go, please like and subscribe and feel free to leave a comment. Please share this with others who need to know. And if you are a billionaire who funds the Federalist Society, please don't kill me. Just leave a nasty comment. There's an organization called Opus Dei within the Federalist Society that's pushing extreme religious beliefs onto all of us, and it's time to recognize this and raise our voices against it.